We never compare things in absolute terms, always needing a foothold to define value. And that is why we easily become hostages to pre-existing comparisons. That is one of the phrases that haunts me when reading, because it is not just true for small choices, picking a dish on the menu or choosing a pair of shoes in a store, but also resonates in the most seemingly monumental decisions of a person's life. We rarely know what we truly want, only knowing that we are better or worse than others. The book I want to tell you about today is an autopsy of the mind. It does not comfort us with platitudes about rational living, but instead directly touches upon the systematic irrationality in every corner of life. The pages filled with intricate experiments are often bitterly hilarious, showing that we always behave contrary to what we imagine. From the newspaper cleverly priced so that we choose the right promotional package, to the expensive pill that suddenly cures pain faster than the cheap one. From the free chocolate that makes us overlook a more advantageous choice, to the way we are willing to help selflessly but shy away when offered symbolic compensation. All of this paints a portrait of a fragile human being, easily misled, but who repeats a strange pattern. I remember the first time I read it. I both laughed and felt a chill down my spine, because each experiment is not just a game in a research room, but a mirror reflecting my own life, your life, and society as a whole. Who has never procrastinated on an important task, even though they know that putting it off will only cause more misery? Who has never clung to a meaningless item just because they already own it? Who has never tried to keep all options only to lose sight of the main goal? These paradoxes are not someone else's problems, but our own every day. The biggest question the book poses is also the one I want to send to you right now. If humans are not truly rational, but predictably irrational, how should we live? Is it possible to build a system, from the individual to society, to reduce the traps we set for ourselves, or must we resign ourselves to drifting in the current of error, comforting ourselves that at least we are not alone? Posing that question is not intended to be pessimistic. On the contrary, it is only when we admit irrationality that we have hope, because if there is a rule, we can design solutions for smarter living, to avoid paying a high price for familiar stumbles. This book is like an experienced old friend who both smiles and points out to us, "You've fallen into that trap again." It neither scolds nor soothes, but gives us a new perspective, where irrationality is no longer a tragedy, but an opportunity to learn how to rearrange our lives. So are you ready to step with me into a world where irrationalities are no longer hidden in the shadows, but clearly revealed, so that we look straight at them and ask ourselves, in how many of our life's decisions are we truly in control, and in how many are we merely led by invisible hands? And before we begin the review of the book, we encourage listeners to buy and read it to fully grasp the book's content, because only when you finish this book will you understand the issues I am telling you about. Please buy the book and support the author. Now, let's start reviewing this book together. On a seemingly ordinary afternoon, I accidentally saw an advertising selling newspapers. 3 options. At first, there was nothing worth pausing too long for: the cheap digital edition, the expensive print edition, and a bundle of both print and digital at the exact same price as the print edition. It was immediately clear to anyone that something strange was there. Why would a useless option like the separate print edition exist? But its very presence changed the way we look. Instead of comparing the digital edition with the print edition, the focus was immediately drawn to the combined package. We think we are smart when we choose the best option, but in fact, the presence of the decoy led the way. Humans rarely determine absolute value themselves. We do not know exactly how much a 6-cylinder car is worth, only that it must be more expensive than the 4-cylinder version. When buying a TV, the majority choose the one in the middle, as if that is the safe path, nestled between 2 guiding lights. In a restaurant, a high-priced dish is rarely ordered, but serves to push us towards the second most expensive dish, where the restaurant's profit is cleverly hidden in the difference. Even in relationships, a less attractive option sometimes highlights the other person. We assume we are free, but in reality, we are just circling in the orbit of comparison. But relativity does not stop at a meal or a car. It permeates even where reason seemingly reigns supreme. Money. A young employee once dreamt of earning 100,000 yen a year. 3 years later, he earned 3 times that, but still stood before his superior and complained because his colleagues next to him received a little more. The initial ambition vanished, leaving only the sting of comparison. When senior managers' salaries were made public, not only did it not lower expectations, but it also pulled them up an endless ladder, because no one wants to be lower than their colleagues. The more they look to the side, the less their satisfaction lasts. This is a bitter paradox. We do not necessarily crave more, but to crave more than others. Money, position, even joy, all become fragile when placed next to a larger circle. A doctor once longed for the Nobel Prize, but just a few years later, when friends showed off yachts and villas, he abandoned his research to rush into the financial district. The dream vanished, leaving only the urge to avoid the feeling of inferiority. And so, happiness is not measured by what we have, but by the distance to the person next to us. Escaping is not easy, but sometimes it just requires shifting one's perspective and staying away from the circles of comparison that cause us to minimize our worth. When attending a class reunion, instead of standing near the person bragging about an astronomical salary, we choose to chat with someone simpler. When buying a house, we ignore houses beyond our means so as not to make ourselves unhappy. The essence of the problem is not in the amount of money or the item, but in the illusion of relativity the mind constantly creates. From here, another door opens: the value of supply and demand, which seems objective. But is it really? A story from a distant ocean shows that everything is much more fragile. A man once held post-war surplus watches, exchanging them for priceless black pearls that, at first, no one paid attention to. But just by placing them next to diamonds, associating them with luxury stores, and attaching an absurd price, the world immediately acknowledged their value. From being abandoned, the black pearls moved onto the necks of city ladies, and the initial price, completely arbitrary, anchored itself in human perception for years. From that moment, a subtle principle emerged. Value is not discovered, but shaped. Just as young geese see the first object and automatically assume that it is their mother, a process called imprinting, we too are affected by the initial impression, which is called the anchoring effect. When a number appears before our eyes, however meaningless, it leaves a trace in the mind, and subsequent decisions revolve around that marker like a magnet drawing a needle. In a class at MIT, students were asked to write the last 2 digits of their social security number and then decide whether they would be willing to pay that amount for wine, a wireless keyboard, or a box of chocolate. No one believed that those random numbers influenced the choice, but when the results appeared, the group with the high numbers was willing to pay many times more than the group with the low numbers. They thought they were independent, but in reality, they were being anchored to a meaningless starting point. From the black pearl to the last digits of an ID, all value is fragile. This systematic arbitrariness turns into the foundation for cycles of consumption. People pay more, not because the thing is more worthy, but because the first time they saw that value, it was at that level. Once the anchor is set, subsequent purchases revolve around that price, thereby endlessly sustaining the market, which seems objective but turns out to operate on layers of psychological imprints. Imagine a person who buys their first pair of shoes at a high price, and then any other pair that is slightly cheaper is considered a bargain. Conversely, if they first encountered a similar item at a low price, any higher price later is hard to accept. Value is no longer a matter of material or effort, but the first ink mark on a blank page. Once that ink has dried, all subsequent lines are forced to revolve around it. The danger is that we often believe we are acting rationally. We believe that supply and demand are iron laws, that prices reflect scarcity and true value. But if supply and demand start from an arbitrary point, then all the curves afterwards are just illusions maintained by habit and memory. The initial value is like the narrator opening the play. It does not need to be true, only powerful enough to stick in our memory so that the following scenes are forced to comply. And then another phenomenon appears with power no less than price anchoring. It does not come from a number, but from one word: free. In an experiment, premium Lindt chocolate was sold for $0.15 and Hershey's Kisses for only $0.01. The majority chose Lindt because the difference in quality was too obvious. But when the price dropped by 1 cent for each type, meaning Hershey's Kisses became free, the picture was reversed. The crowd rushed to take the free chocolate, even though its actual value was still higher than the price. Zero created a strange surge. When everything is free, rationality leaves the stage. The fear of loss disappears, leaving unmeasurable excitement. A cheaper item might still be refused, but few can resist a free one. We accept standing in long lines, putting in extra effort, even spending more on other things just to hunt for the free item, as if zero opens a magical gate where all calculations dissolve. The scary thing is that, in the real world, free is rarely harmless. Companies use it as a bait, and social policies use it to guide behavior. We think we are gaining, but often we end up paying more. Zero turns into a double-edged sword. It makes us feel victorious, but at the same time, it robs us of the ability to see the true cost. From the newspaper packages, the pearls, to the chocolate, all point to a common picture. We do not act like rational individuals. We are dragged along by comparison, branded by the first impression, and mesmerized by the number zero.
There is a fragile boundary that few notice, lying between two worlds. Social norms where we act for connection, kindness, and a sense of belonging, and market norms where all behavior is converted into monetary value. These two worlds often exist in parallel, but when they collide, the result is never simple. Try to imagine. A friend asks you to help them move. You are willing to come, carry things all day, and do it happily because it is an act of help. But if he gives you 50,000 VND as compensation, the feeling immediately changes. Suddenly, the act is no longer sharing, but becomes a cheap transaction. You might refuse, or if you accept, the mood is completely different. The appearance of money has shattered a delicate structure built on trust and kindness. Experiments have proven this. When people were asked to help with a small task without pay, they agreed. When offered a small amount, many refused. But when offered a large amount, they accepted, because at that point, the rules of the game completely belong to the market. The paradox is this: paying a small amount reduces motivation, while paying nothing maintains enthusiasm. We often live in the overlap zone of these two worlds. Volunteer work, helping neighbors, family meals, all operate under social norms. They bring joy, connection, and a sense of meaning. But when money intervenes, that atmosphere is distorted. Once relationships are pulled toward the market, it is difficult to pull them back to the social side. The same is true in the labor environment. When everything is reduced to salary, bonuses, penalties, and contracts, people easily lose the sense of loyalty and sharing. Conversely, when an organization creates a culture of attachment, encouraging contributions that go beyond calculation, employees are willing to do more than what is written in the contract. Money is necessary, but not sufficient. It buys working hours, but not dedication. This difference is also evident in the family. Compare children helping their parents clean the house out of duty and love versus parents paying them every time they wash the dishes. The actions are the same, but the meaning is completely different. One creates connection, the other turns into a transaction that easily cracks affection. The cost of mixing the two systems of norms is very high. When we monetize relationships, we think we are increasing efficiency, but in fact, we lose the hardest thing to measure, the humanity in behavior. And once we have crossed into the market side, returning to the social side is almost impossible. If an organization wants paid employees to encourage volunteering, cutting that amount makes it difficult to restore the initial spirit of volunteering. This leads to another paradox. Sometimes, to encourage kindness, it is best to pay nothing at all, so that feelings operate in their own space. Money should not be mixed into it. That is not a romantic plea, but the result of a series of psychological experiments that show human nature is easily shaped by the context in which the action is embedded. When we connect the pieces, the picture gradually becomes clear. From endless comparison to the first imprint of price anchoring, to the sweet illusion of zero, and then to the collision between two systems of norms, all point in one direction. We are not rational machines. We act according to invisible rules, often contrary to our true benefit. That irrationality is not random, but repeats enough to be named predictable irrationality. We often think we know ourselves well, that reason is enough to control every situation. But when breathing is hurried, the blood rushes, all those principles suddenly become fragile like wet paper. In a discrete experiment, young men were asked to answer questions about sex, morality, and their level of willingness to take risks while in a normal state. They gave quite measured answers. But when the body was aroused, all those norms collapsed quickly. Things once considered disgusting became acceptable. Behaviors they had sworn never to do now suddenly turned into could try. That transformation is no joke. It shows that we are too naive to think we can maintain rationality in all circumstances. When sober, we promise to be faithful, safe, and not cross the line. But when the wave of emotion hits, the promise melts. The paradox lies in the fact that it is in the calm moment that we underestimate the power of the hot state. As a result, we do not prepare, we do not build safeguards, and when the storm comes, we are naked before the power of instinct. The question posed is this: is true freedom not in the ability to choose while in the grip of impulse, but in the ability to bind oneself beforehand? Condoms kept in the wallet, rigid control mechanisms can be the salvation, not because we are weak, but because we understand the extent of our weakness. Freedom sometimes takes the shape of a chain, a reminder that we set the limit to save ourselves. If hot emotions break the will, procrastination erodes every facet of life. Everyone has promised to start tomorrow, dieting, studying, saving, quitting smoking, but tomorrow rarely comes. In a class, when students were allowed to choose their own deadlines for submitting papers, the majority stretched them out and then got stuck in the rush, resulting in low grades and high anxiety. Conversely, the group given a fixed deadline studied better. Turns out, external compulsion brought inner freedom, freedom from the burden of laziness and procrastination. Think about how many times we allowed ourselves complete freedom and ended up lost. The truth is not easy to swallow. Absolute freedom is sometimes a burden, while timely constraints offer salvation. Those who know how to set deadlines for themselves, even with accompanying penalties, often go farther. This could be an automatic savings deduction account, a mandatory vaccination schedule, or an accountability partner. A pre-commitment device is like erecting a fence. It prevents us from sliding down the familiar slope of procrastination, from hot emotions that derail us to hesitation that traps us. The picture is becoming clear. We do not lack knowledge. We do not lack reason, but we lack the mechanisms to keep ourselves on track. People do not fail because they do not know what to do, but because they know but cannot do it. And the solution often lies in having the courage to admit our weakness and then voluntarily set up protective walls. Possession, which is thought to bring security, often becomes the most secretive cage. Observe how people react when they have an item in hand, a basketball ticket. If they possess it, they demand a price many times higher than the amount they would be willing to pay to buy it if they did not have the ticket. No objective reason explains that difference. Just a simple change in the state of have or have not is enough to invert the valuation. The secret lies in the asymmetry between gain and loss. The joy of gaining a small benefit is not comparable to the pain of losing that very benefit. Loss stings us much deeper than the excitement of a gain. So once we own something, we cling to it, even when the cost to keep it is unreasonably high. We hold on to a stock that is losing heavily, instead of selling to cut losses with the fragile hope that it will recover. We keep a house that is no longer suitable because we are attached to it. That clinging causes us to sacrifice other opportunities, even draining our finances and mental energy. The more we own, the greater the burden. What we think is an asset is sometimes a chain. We are willing to pay extra to avoid being downgraded in a hotel room, even if that cost ruins the trip. We accept sacrificing freedom to cling to the label of mine. The paradox here is that the very thing we believe protects us hurts us more.
But if the attachment to objects is strong, the obsession to keep every option open is even more intense. People hate the feeling of having a door closed on them. In a computer game, players were given 3 doors to choose points. Instead of just choosing the best door and focusing on it, they wasted time clicking back and forth, preventing the other doors from disappearing, even though the reward was minimal. The sight of a locked option made them so uneasy that they had to pay a price to hold on to it. In life, we are the same. We sign up for many courses, but complete none. We maintain many half-hearted relationships just so as not to lose the option should we need it. We spread our energy across a series of projects, fearing that giving up an option means permanent loss. In fact, that very clinging exhausts us, and the most important thing is neglected. An ancient general once burned his ships after landing, cutting off the retreat route and forcing his soldiers to have only one path: forward. When all the doors behind are closed, people concentrate all their energy on the immediate goal. In contrast, modern life fosters the habit of keeping all doors open. We keep fiddling between countless paths, thinking we are free, but in fact, we are scattered.
And thus, the journey from hot emotions, procrastination, the cost of possession, to the obsession with open doors has erected a mirror. In that mirror, we see ourselves, an irrational creature, but predictably irrational. Realizing that is not for despair, but to clearly understand that to live smarter, we cannot just rely on fragile reason. We need constraints, courageous choices, and sometimes even brutal decisiveness to know when to let go. When it comes to expectations, we often think they're just predictions in our head. But expectations are not just in the mind. They permeate the experience itself, thereby transforming the perception of reality. Once, participants were divided into 2 groups, drinking the same beer. The only difference was that one group knew a few drops of vinegar had been added to the glass, while the other group did not. The result was paradoxical. The group that did not know still found the beer tasty, while the group that did know found it awful. The same liquid, but the sensation was completely controlled by the accompanying information. In another experiment, just telling patients that the pill was more expensive, its pain-relieving effect significantly increased. A 50-cent aspirin knocked out the pain faster than a 1-cent pill, even though the ingredients were identical. Price, which seemed like an external number, seeped into the body, changing the nerve's perception. It turns out that belief can become part of the drug's effectiveness.
Expectation does not only affect pain or taste, but also touches morality. When people are reminded of high standards like the 10 Commandments, their ability to cheat significantly decreases. Conversely, when the atmosphere allows bending the rules, deception spreads. The paradox is that we often think deception only happens to the greedy, but experiments show that most people are willing to cheat a little, as long as they can maintain an image of decency in the mirror. We do not want to think of ourselves as bad people, but also do not want to miss out on easy gains. Cash brings a special difference. When the reward is given in real money, people are much more hesitant than when the reward is in the form of material goods or credits. It seems that directly touching money reminds us too clearly of social norms, making us more cautious. But when the veil is covered by indirect forms, the boundary wavers and deception flourishes. That is why embezzlers rarely steal cash, but often bypass it through documents and invoices. The layers of intermediaries make the behavior seem less ethically blatant. At a deeper level, all of this combines to form a picture called behavioral economics. It explains why the market is not always rational, why buyers are anchored by prices, sellers exploit comparison, and society as a whole can be swept away by irrational whirlpools. The image of the free lunch, a familiar metaphor, becomes a reminder that benefits that look like they cost nothing actually always hide a cost somewhere.
That is why, when the financial bubble burst, people realized that small mistakes do not disappear on a large scale. They accumulate, creating a powerful wave strong enough to sink the global economy. Blind faith in human rationality turns out to be the most dangerous naivete. Putting it all together, we see a journey from comparison, price anchoring, free, social norms to emotions, procrastination, possession, keeping doors open, expectation, the illusory value of money, and even the dark corners of honesty. Humans appear not as optimal calculation machines, but as an irrational but predictable organism. And that predictability opens up hope. If we understand how we err, we can design life, the market, and even society in a way that minimizes the consequences of that error. The final pieces are fitting together into a picture that is both familiar and strange. We begin to clearly see a common thread running through every seemingly disconnected situation. Human irrationality is not random, but repeats in a predictable pattern. From the high-priced cup of coffee that makes us believe it tastes better, to the expensive pill that reduces our pain. From the small lie that everyone allows themselves, to the entire financial system that can be shaken by false beliefs multiplied millions of times. The question is no longer why we are irrational, but what we will do with this irrationality. If we stubbornly maintain the image of humans as rational machines, we will continue to build systems based on a false assumption. But if we accept the truth that we are easily led, easily deceived by our own expectations and emotions, we can redesign rules, policies, and even daily life to be more suitable. Imagine a world where banks not only offer interest rates, but also help customers lock deposits to prevent them from impulse spending. Where the government encourages vaccination by having people sign a pre-commitment and receive a reward if they keep the appointment. Where schools do not just teach math and literature, but also teach how humans truly make decisions, with all their weaknesses and biases. In that picture, behavioral economics is not just a theory, but a practical tool to help us make fewer mistakes. It does not turn us into angels, but helps us design the world around us to uplift instead of dragging us down. Like putting up a fence around a steep road, not because we don't know how to walk, but because we know we will stumble. And then we must face the biggest paradox. Accepting our irrationality is the most rational action. Maturity is not about denying weakness, but about knowing where one is prone to stumble and actively creating mechanisms to cling to. From the laboratory with glasses of vinegar-laced beer to the wider world of financial bubbles, the single message that resonates is to be vigilant against illusions, because we ourselves weave them. Reflecting on every daily decision, from small purchases to major life choices, we all carry the seeds of irrationality. Knowing it exists, we can smile and say, I am not entirely rational, but at least I foresaw my irrationality, and in the gap between that awareness and action, a wiser, less self-deceiving, and somewhat more humane life can be ignited. One afternoon, in a small pub, the same beer was poured for several groups of customers. The difference was not in the liquid in the glass, but in the accompanying information. Some groups were told that a little vinegar had been added to the beer. Others were not warned. The strange thing happened. Those who knew the truth before tasting grimaced and complained, while those who did not know at all raised their glasses and praised the taste. The same flavor, the same liquid, but the experience was completely opposite. It turns out that the deciding factor was not the drop of vinegar, but the expectation that seeped into every taste bud cell. This mechanism is not just at the bar. In a ball game, two groups of fans watched the same collision. One group clearly saw the opposing player commit a foul. The other group insisted their own player was fouled. It is not that their eyes saw differently, but that their minds had a preset mold to fit the data into. The world in our heads is not a reflecting mirror, but like a stained glass pane covering reality. We look through it and see the truth exactly as we expect. Expectation, which is seen as a tool for us to prepare for the future,
turns into something that can distort the present. It helps us be less surprised, less chaotic, but at the same time, it freezes us in illusion. A person who believes that an expensive medicine is good will truly see their pain disappear faster. A person who believes that high-priced wine is delicious will perceive a more refined taste. That belief seeps into the body, changing the way the nerves send signals. In the laboratory, reaction measuring devices confirmed that price and expectation are not just concepts, they touch pain, taste, and even the brain. The paradox is this: knowing that one is being led may not save one when drinking the beer. Just briefly thinking about vinegar, the tongue is already prepared to reject the flavor, just like in society. Just carrying a prejudice, we unconsciously filtered information to reinforce that prejudice. Two groups of people can live in the same city, read the same newspaper, but exist in two completely different realities. This explains why social, political, and religious conflicts often escalate. Each side not only has different beliefs, but truly experiences a different world. In their eyes, the opponent is not only wrong, but also blind. And because of this, dialogue becomes impossible. Expectation has erected invisible walls, turning the truth into fragments arranged as desired. Looking deeper, expectation is both a source of strength and a trap. It helps doctors reassure patients, helps sellers create a seemingly high-value experience, helps us endure a long day believing that we will rest on the weekend, but it also locks us in illusion, preventing us from looking straight at an unfavorable reality. Once we believe, we not only interpret events according to belief, but also perceive the whole world in that color. The question is not how to eliminate expectation. That is impossible, but whether we can identify when it is leading us away from the truth. Can we simultaneously utilize the power to soothe pain and avoid the trap that turns us into prisoners of our own created belief? From the story of vinegar-laced beer to expensive pain relievers, from the football stands to the luxury dining table, the common thread gradually emerges. The mind does not wait for reality to arrive before judging. It creates a mold and then forces reality into that mold. And what we experience is often what we had decided beforehand in silence. Price is often considered an objective mirror reflecting value. But what happened in the experiment shows that it is more like a mysterious language transmitted directly into the body. Patients were given the same pain reliever. The only difference was the announced price. When they heard that the pill was worth 50 cents, the pain disappeared significantly faster than the group told the pill was only worth 1 cent. Same active ingredient, same shape. But the results were different. This effect is not just in pain. In experiments with energy drinks, participants who sold the drink at a high price performed better in intellectual puzzle games, while the group that bought the same drink at a lower price performed worse. The price had seeped into the brain, not only changing belief, but also adjusting actual performance. This is not simply self-hypnosis. Signals from the price cause the body to release corresponding physiological reactions similar to how a placebo works. Belief transforms into neurological reality. The paradox is clear. We pay more not because the product is better, but because we paid more, we perceive it as better. Manufacturers and marketers understand this very well.
A bottle of wine with an elaborate label and a high price immediately suggests sophistication to the drinker, and they genuinely perceive more layers of flavor. An ordinary product that is priced too cheaply easily makes customers suspicious, even if the substance is no different. In that world, price does not just reflect value, but also creates value. There is a hidden danger. If we let price control our feelings, every experience can be bought. Low-quality medicine is still trusted if sold expensively enough. Mediocre service is still praised if dressed in luxury. The so-called rational consumer becomes a puppet on a string, manipulated by the number on the label.
Yet this realization can also become a tool. If a little belief in value can make medicine more effective, can medicine and social science leverage it to heal instead of deceive? If we know that illusory value exists, we can design experiences to reinforce healthy beliefs, not to exploit naivety. Between the illusion of price and the real experience, we encounter the eternal paradox. The trap and the opportunity are often one and the same. We are easily influenced by labeled value. On the other hand, that very influence can help us live less painfully, with more trust, and sometimes more happily.
From the price tag, the journey continues to slide into another territory, where it is no longer about beer or medicine, but the fragile honesty of human beings. Why do most of us not lie completely, nor are we completely pure, but stop in the gray area between the two extremes? And why is just a moral reminder enough to make our hands tremble, not daring to cheat anymore? Honesty in life is often portrayed as a black and white line. Either we are honest or we are deceitful. But when entering the laboratory, that boundary melts away, revealing a large gray area. In the Matrix experiment, participants only needed to solve simple math problems in a few minutes and then report the number of correct answers. They had the opportunity to cheat because no one checked. The results are thought-provoking. The majority did not cheat maximally, but only added a little, just a few questions, enough to benefit but not so much as to feel like a liar. It turns out that what we protect is not necessarily benefit, but the image in the mirror. We want to be seen as good people, even in our own eyes. Therefore, we accept cheating a little, as long as we can still tell ourselves that everyone does it. That is a gentle self-deception, a negotiation between benefit and morality. But just changing the context, the behavior shifts. When the group of participants was asked to recite the 10 Commandments before taking the test, the level of cheating sharply decreased, even disappearing. Just a brief touch with moral memory was enough to make the hand hesitate. Similarly, when students signed an honor code committing to honesty, deception was almost zero. The paradox here is that morality is not an immutable internal trait, but is flexible, able to be awakened or forgotten by just a suggestion. And when an intermediary layer is added, the situation is reversed. In a variation of the experiment, instead of receiving direct cash, participants were paid with tokens, which were then exchanged for money. Unexpectedly, the level of cheating skyrocketed. As soon as the money was obscured, the conscience also dimmed. We do not feel like we are stealing because what we hold in our hands is not real money. That buffer is enough to soothe the feeling of guilt, paving the way for dishonesty to spread. This phenomenon is repeated everywhere. People rarely steal cash from a safe, but easily inflate invoices, bypass funds through documents, or exploit loopholes in the rewards system. The nature is still appropriation, but the presence of the intermediary layer makes it seem less serious and thus more easily accepted. These experiments expose a reality. We are not just moral or immoral beings, but beings who negotiate with our conscience. We live in a gray zone where small collisions can pull us toward the light and layers of intermediaries can push us toward the dark. Honesty, which seems like a rigid quality, is surprisingly fragile and flexible.
Having seen how easily people can be swayed, the next question arises. Is it possible to design mechanisms that help us choose the less erroneous path? Do real free lunches exist? Ways that both individuals and society can benefit simply by rearranging the context to fit human nature? In classical economics, the phrase, "there is no such thing as a free lunch," is often mentioned, meaning every benefit must be traded for something. No one benefits without a hidden cost. But when observing how people truly act, a paradox arises. Sometimes by just changing the arrangement, everyone can win together. A retirement savings program showed this. Many workers admitted they wanted to save more, but they delayed, procrastinated, and year after year, the savings rate remained paltry. If only counseling was offered, the results barely improved. However, when the idea of save more tomorrow emerged, the situation was reversed. Instead of asking to increase now, the program allowed them to sign a commitment. the next time their salary increased, the savings rate would automatically increase accordingly. The worker did not have to sacrifice the present, but gradually achieved the long-term goal. After just a few years, the average savings rate jumped from 3.4% to over 13%. This is not a trick, but an obvious truth. If we understand the predictable irrationality of human beings, we can design a mechanism to make it serve us instead of ruin us. Pre-commitment helps us fight procrastination, reasonable pricing helps us avoid being tricked by labels, timely moral reminders keep us from sliding in the gray zone. Each experiment, each story has outlined a tool. Putting them together, we have a new set of tools for economics, management, and even personal life.
So, does the free lunch truly exist? In the classical sense, perhaps not. But if understood in the sense of clever interventions that help people move closer to what they truly want without causing them pain, then yes. These are the social lunches that should be served in an organized way, so that people fall into fewer traps and are less betrayed by their own instincts. And so the journey concludes. From awkward comparisons, random price anchors, the power of zero, the clash between social and market norms, to impulsive heat, persistent procrastination, the burden of possession, the obsession with open choices, the illusion of expectation, the power of price, the gray area of honesty, and the intermediary layers that deceive the conscience, all point to one truth. Humans are not as rational as we think, but are predictably irrational. Acknowledging this does not make us pessimistic. On the contrary, it opens up hope, because by clearly understanding the irrational grooves in the mind, we can build protective barriers, creating clever systems to uplift. People will still be naive, still make mistakes, but at least with a little understanding and courage, we can err in a less painful way and live more consciously amid the myriad illusions that we ourselves erect. Thank you for your patience in accompanying me on this journey. Every story, every experiment not only exposes human irrationality, but also opens a mirror reflecting back onto ourselves. If you have completed the journey, you are probably also asking yourself how many times you have been led by the illusion of comparison, how many times you have procrastinated on a decision, how many times you let free or an intermediary layer deceive you. I hope you will leave your thoughts, not to agree or disagree, but so that we can see different perspectives from the same book. Sometimes an unexpected comment from a reader sheds light on a layer of meaning that I had never thought of. If you have another book you would like to hear recounted, please share. This journey doesn't stop at one point. It always expands, according to the suggestions, according to the desire for discovery of each person. The biggest takeaway is not about avoiding all mistakes. No one can. But understanding that our mistakes have a pattern, are predictable, and thanks to that, we can live more wisely. By accepting our irrationality, we find a more rational footing than anything else. That paradox is the deepest lesson. See you in the next retelling.